Let's talk now about what reinvention is and why it matters to you for the success and longevity of your business. The world gives you two opportunities. It's as simple as that. There's two choices that you have every day in this world: extinction and evolution. It's as simple as that. 99% of all species that have ever lived on the planet today are extinct. That's the issue. You adapt and you survive. If you don't adapt, you perish. If you really, really do better than just adapt, if you reinvent yourself, if you transform your offering, if you transform what you are, you do more than just survive, you thrive. And you're saying, I'm a banker, I'm a business. Why are you comparing me to the woolly mammoth? Well, I'll tell you what, the harsh reality is this: businesses have a lot worse track record than these animal species. Animal species last millions of years. Businesses last a few years. I know that in this room there are a whole bunch of people that have, their banks have charters that are probably 100 years old or older. Fantastic. Congratulations. You know how few businesses last more than 100 years? There's the Ford Motor Companies, there's the Guinness breweries, there's those companies, but there's also a whole bunch of companies that don't last hardly a spit in the wind. You're saying, oh yeah, the mom and pop pizza shop, the people that come and want a loan from me in my small town. No, I'm telling you what, there's some pretty big names. The reality is 51% of businesses do not last 5 years. You guys have heard these statistics, I'm sure you have. Just to kind of put it in perspective, those are companies right there, brands that are household names or were in their day that perished because they could not adapt. They could not survive. Not only that, they did not thrive, but they were thriving at one point in their lives. Blockbuster. Do people still watch movies at home? Do people still watch movies at home? This is not a trick question. Of course you do. Who would have been better positioned than Blockbuster? What about Redbox right now? What about Netflix right now? People still watch movies in their home. Blockbuster was a household name. There was a Blockbuster on every corner in every town. They sponsored a stadium in Miami. They sponsored a bowl game. Blockbuster. People still watch movies. Why did they not become what we now use for watching home entertainment? Because they got flat-footed, because they lost their way, because they got complacent. What about Kodak? Do people still take pictures? Do people still take pictures? Of course they do. People still take pictures. When I was a little kid, you went to Hook's Drug Store in Huntington, Indiana. You gave them your film. They developed it. While you're standing there waiting for them to process that or talk to you about processing that, you bought another yellow box of Kodak film. Did you not? People still take pictures? They use Polaroids anymore? No, there's no more Polaroid, there's no more Kodak. The point is, people still take pictures. Why was Kodak? They were one of the Dow 30 components. When George Eastman began that company, it was all about innovation. He was a technological overachiever. Started out watching nature and decided he was more into film than watching nature. The point is, people still take pictures. What happened? They got flat-footed. They got complacent. Pan Am, I fly all the time, 150 days a year. The quintessential American airline. You can still buy their baggage. You can buy luggage tags and baggage with the Pan Am logo on it. That's how popular it is. You can't fly on a Pan Am flight with it, but by God, you can buy their luggage. Radio Shack, growing up in Huntington, Indiana, if you wanted a cassette recorder or a turntable, you went to Radio Shack and bought your home technology. Do people still use technology in the home? Yeah. Of course they do. So what happened to Radio Shack that's now in bankruptcy and is probably not going to exist? The point is, these are all household names that went extinct. I could keep going. There's all kinds of them. The reality is, most of this comes down to they lost their entrepreneurial thinking that George Eastman once had, Kodak lost. They decided they couldn't do things that might cannibalize themselves. Why would we get on digital when we're so good at selling film? Well, where did photography go? It went away from film, went to digital. These are the kind of questions you might ask yourself. You're saying, well, great, those are all companies that don't do what I do. I'm a bank. Well, we could probably name institutions that are familiar to you in your industry. The reality is, it's all about innovation staying relevant. We've all heard this statement. If the only thing constant is change, right? We always hear that. The only thing constant is change. Why would your brand or business be an exception to that rule? Is your brand better than Kodak? Is your business better than Pan Am? Are you more recognizable as a brand than, say, Radio Shack? The reality is, nothing is immune to this. We all know this, right? You guys know my story. That's me. You guys have seen the impersonation. That's actually me in both pictures. That's me on the left the way I used to do it, where I'd put on the gray hair, the fat padding, and become Bill Clinton. That's me on the right this summer, because I decided there might be a chance to make a little bit of money doing Bill Clinton again. So I went and found a guy from Universal Studios, and I paid him a lot of money to put on prosthetics and change my hair and trim down the fat padding and buy a new suit. so that if I have a chance to make money being Bill Clinton again, or if another movie thing might come along, I've got a $12,000 investment, I'm ready to do it. I can be Bill Clinton again. The point is, you know my story. I got in this business, in case you don't know, in case you were not here last year, I quit my job in 1994 selling lighting fixtures to become a professional political satire guy, a political comedian. That's my background. That's how I got in this line of work. 2001, I knew things were going to change. Bill Clinton's no longer president. We know that's going to happen. I did not predict 9/11. I did not predict that the million or so dollars I had in savings and investments was going to become $400,000 in a matter of a few months. I did not predict that I was going to have to start living off of my investments because things got really bad. I did not predict that nobody would get on an airplane for about 6 or 8 months. I got phone calls for about 6 months. All they did was cancel events that I had. So it was reinvention time really fast. You know that thing about necessity is the mother of invention? Well, I was already planning on reinventing myself. I didn't know it was going to go hypo-turbo like it did. You're saying, well, that's not going to happen to me. Well, how do you know it's not going to happen to you? We know it just happened in 08 going into 09, right? So the financial crisis may have not been unique. What if that happens again? What if that happens before we're actually bailed out from this one? So always be prepared for this. I can give you my story as an entrepreneurial guy, a political comedian guy, a small business guy, a political satire dude, but I'm telling you it's the same thing. So I've kind of made a study of reinvention, if you will. I read the Wall Street Journal, I watch stuff, I read books, and I look at companies and brands that have had to reinvent themselves, and I think it's a pretty fascinating subject. What I've basically determined is this. Damian, what's reinvention? You're getting ready to ask that, weren't you, Dan? I did. Reinvention is staying relevant in an ever-changing competitive marketplace. That's it. You want to be relevant. You're saying, what's that mean? I mean relevance equals demand. For me, it means people like Chris Bennett calling me up wanting to book me for events. That's relevance. For you, it's people coming in your door wanting to open checking accounts, wanting to borrow money, wanting to be your customer, be your depositor, be with you for the long haul. Relevance equals demand in the marketplace. Relevance means you do something for their life. For me, relevance meant nobody wanted political comedy anymore. Nobody wanted Bill Clinton delivering comedy anymore. So what did that leave me? I had to invent something that satisfied a need for a paying customer somewhere. That's what we're talking about. As such, if you want to reinvent, there's 3 options. You want to reinvent yourself, I think there's 3 options. You can agree or disagree, you can take notes, we'll be glad to talk about this later. Obviously, we're a little punched on time. You got 3 options you want to reinvent yourself. The first one is change your product. This is a pretty wholesale thing. I'd give myself as the example. Political comedian doing what I do now. Humorous speaker for business and agricultural events, right? Changing your product. It's not just a personality thing, it's all kinds of things. But this takes a lot of work. You're talking about a pretty wholesale change to what it is you offer. There's a great example of it. We're 5 years away from the world not remembering Michael Strahan as a great defensive end for the New York Giants. Why? Because he completely reinvented himself. He doesn't talk about being a football player anymore. He's on TV with Kelly Ripa. He's on the Good Morning America show. He has a television endorsement deal for Meta fiber bars. He's 43 years old and a former professional athlete. Surely to God he doesn't have to take fiber bars. But he's got the endorsement gig. You know what else he has? Anybody get anything in the flyer this last week? Anybody get a mailing from JCPenney? He now has the Michael Strahan collection at JCPenney. He's getting into apparel. These are pretty wholesale changes to his product, right? All he did from the time he was 5 years old was play football. Do you think it was easy for him to make this adaptation? Of course not. If you're going to reinvent yourself, there might be some hard work. There might be some heavy lifting. You might have to get out of your comfort zone as a bank in a community situation as you currently are. You want an example that's not a personality? Does anybody here know that Sprint began as the Southern Pacific Railroad? Hence the SPRA and Sprint. Southern Pacific Railroad. They had communication lines going up and down their rails all over the southwest United States of America. By the 1970s, people are paying good money for long distance. Remember that, when you actually paid money for a long distance phone call? They bought a regional carrier in Abilene, Kansas. Decided maybe they could use those lines to start selling telecommunication. They don't do rail anymore. Sprint is the Now network. Pretty wholesale change to the product, right? Option number 1, you want to reinvent, you change your product. There's 3 ways. I'll give them to you right now. Everybody can write this down except for the guy back there that's reading the program, not listening. How you doing? I appreciate you just staying awake, to be honest with you. I really do. Yeah. Sorry to go off track. I'm kind of getting in the weeds for a bit. You change your product, you change your customers, you change your image. Those are your three options. You want to reinvent, you change your product, you change your customers, you change your image. I just told you about two great examples of changing the product. Let's talk about changing your customers. This is a sales job. This is a marketing job. Those of you that are sitting here, the more sales-oriented, more brand-oriented bankers, you're saying, okay, great, we got the deposits, we've got the thing. I heard, what I got to do as a CFO, what the kind of money we have to have. I listened to the discussions today. But I'm a branding guy. I'm a marketing guy. Changing your customers. Leave the product the same. You just got to find more customers. This is pretty brilliant. A couple of great stories for you. I think about the Play-Doh company. Does anybody here know that Play-Doh actually began as wallpaper cleaner? Neat little story. The Cut-Doll wallpaper cleaner out of Cincinnati, Ohio, 1950s, they're going broke. People don't have wallpaper anymore. They have vinyl because World War II revolutionized. We started making wallpaper out of vinyl. You could use soap and water. Plus, people didn't use coal to heat their house anymore. So no longer was there black soot on the house, on the walls of your house. So you're saying, what can I do with this product? One of the owners had a sister-in-law who was a nursery school instructor in Cincinnati. The little kids couldn't take the molding and modeling clay, and they couldn't get their fingers to do the stuff because it's pretty hard to work with, right? Because you're a little kid. So she took a tub of Cut-Doll in there, and the children loved it. So all of a sudden, the company thinks this is pretty cool. Maybe we could start doing this. They went to other nursery schools and grade schools, and they put this product out there. It caught on. They were not long on money, but they were long on salesmanship. They scored a meeting with a guy named Bob Keeshan that you guys might know as Captain Kangaroo. And for 2% of gross sales, Captain Kangaroo agreed that he would play with Play-Doh one day a week on his television program, hence Play-Doh. The difference between Play-Doh and wallpaper cleaner is a different package, and they put a little bit of food coloring in the product. That's it. Oh, and they sell it for a heck of a lot more money. Okay? Option number one, you change your product. Option number two, you change your customer. You want another good customer story? Mr. DeHaven, you're saying, yes, I love this stuff because I'm a selling and a marketing guy, right? I mean, you're pretty revolutionary. You brought the ICBDN guy up there, and you brought the ABA guy up there. They didn't fight. They got along pretty well. They both promised me they're going to come here and sit in the front row. Hi, guys. I sat through your boring-ass session, and look at what I get. I sat here and listened to people carry on about stuff that only a banker could carry about, and half of you didn't. And this is the feedback and payback I get. Thanks, fellas. Number two option you have here when you want to change your customers, this is a good story also. Does anybody here know that Marlboro actually began as a ladies' cigarette? Marlboro was not the man's cigarette. Marlboro Red was not Cowboy Reds like it is now. Marlboro's began as a ladies' branded cigarette. You don't believe me? You see that ad right up there from a magazine in the 1950s, a little baby saying, gee, Mommy, you sure love your Marlboros. Probably wouldn't sell cigarettes like that today, would you? I used to smoke. I was raised the youngest of 9 children. I probably had my first cigarette in the back of a Nova when I was like 5. That's how it is when you're the youngest in a big family. Hey, shut him up. Oh, he's too big for a pacifier. Here, smoke this. Might be true. Maybe it's stunted my growth. I can't tell you for sure. Maybe I'd be in the NBA if it wasn't for the cigarettes. But I'm telling you, there's very little different from one cigarette to the next. Oh, you can change the color of the filter, the paper on it. You can vary the length from a Moore or Virginia Slim to a Camel Straight. But the point is, it's basically the same product. All it is marketing. Marlboro became Marlboro because Philip Morris decided that as a lady cigarette, it was not working. So in the 1960s, through a very crafty group of marketing and a marketing plan, they invented the Marlboro Man. In magazine ads, they drew a picture of what the Marlboro Man was. He was an American. He was red-blooded. He rode a horse. He was a cowboy. He was a lot of things. He's an emphysema guy, whatever you want to say. They probably didn't say that. The point is, there's no difference in the product. All they did was find a new set of customers, okay? Option number one, you want to reinvent, you want to transform, you want to survive and adapt. That's wonderful, but we want you to thrive. So if you want to thrive in tomorrow's marketplace, because remember, it's relevance. You want to be relevant. You want your customers to feel that they need your bank 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, next year from now. You want to be relevant. Option number one, you change your product. Option number two, you change your customers. Option number three, you change your image. Change your image. Now this one you're saying, I like this one because I don't have to go out there and change anything that I do. I don't have to go out and find new customers and become a salesman because I hate being a salesman. I don't want to sell, I just want to bank. Option number three, change your image. This works pretty well. Anybody know those companies? Remember in 1991 when Kentucky Fried Chicken became KFC? Because people didn't think fried was a healthy word. People were getting vascular disease and they were getting fat, and it's because it was fried. No, it's not. It's because they were eating a bucket of chicken. But they went to KFC in 1991. Have you noticed that because what's cool is everything, what's old is new again? They've got Darrell Hammond dressed up as the Colonel doing those commercials, and they're calling it Kentucky Fried Chicken again because vintage is in, because heritage. My wife and I went to dinner a year ago. I ordered a heritage breed pork chop, Berkshire. There's not a person in this room besides me that knows even what Berkshire means. It's a breed of hogs. You know why they're vintage and heritage? Because they sucked as a breed of hogs. That's why we went to different breeds. That's the deal. So anyway, that's why Kentucky Fried Chicken's pulling it back out, but they didn't for a while. These are image changes. Did the chicken change? Did the Colonel's original recipe change? Come on, somebody from Louisville. Okay, you guys can get a little bit more reactive, all right? Thank you. Clean coal. Since the time the woolly mammoth died and became coal, coal ain't changed, all right? But you can't change your customers because who buys coal? Electrical power plants, right? Can you change the product? No. Can you change the customer? No. What are you left with? You change the image. So they said it's clean because we're an environment of environmentalism. So now it's clean coal. Yeah, sure. What the hell could be clean about burning coal, right? Nothing. And of course, my favorite, True Green. I'm a farm boy. Do you know what True Green used to be called? Kimlawn. Kimlawn. Kimlawn, when the 1980s became a bit, when people in the suburbs decided that they wanted their yard to be beautiful and they were willing to pay for it so they could compete, so the guy could say, my yard's better than my neighbor's, Kimlawn came about. And they would come out there and they'd spray Banville, Trimac, 2,4-D, and liquid fertilizer, probably 28% nitrogen diluted. I know this stuff because I'm a farm boy. You know what? It's an environment of environmentalism. So what are you going to do? You can't say Kimlawn anymore because Kim is a bad word. You know how you make your yard beautiful? With chemicals. You can be all the organic, crazy stuff you want. You can tell me about going to farmers markets. I'll tell you it's a bunch of crap because I'm a farm boy. So you know what they did? They changed the name to True Green. You know what they do? They pull in the suburbs. They still go out there and they spray 2,4-D, Banville, liquid nitrogen because that's the only way you make your yard beautiful. But they're green. Yeah, they painted the trucks. All right. Change your product, change your customers, change your image. You guys are saying, I like this image change idea. That's what you're saying, right? You're saying, hey, man, this is pretty good. Some of you are saying, I might actually cultivate an image because right now nobody even knows who we are. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Image change is not easy. Image change is not easy because they fail as often as they succeed. Anybody remember those brands? Of course, you're saying, wait a minute, JCPenney's still around. I owned stock in JCPenney. I saw it go down precipitously while they fired 2 different CEOs. You know why? They went from being a middle-class, middle-America department store, started by James Cash Penney. Man, they would sell you what you needed. And all of a sudden, they decided they're going to be upscale. Then the people said, wait a minute, I don't want to be upscale. They had an image problem. They didn't change their product enough. They didn't change their customers. They didn't know how to go about it. They screwed the whole thing up. Radio Shack's in bankruptcy. They're not going to exist. What about Oldsmobile? 1985, Oldsmobile was the #1 selling automobile in America. When I was in high school, when Mike Zahn and I were in high school, a Cutlass Supreme was the car that everybody wanted. I had a '71 Chevy Impala that I paid $100 for. But the cool kids had Cutlass Supremes. 1985, Cutlass Supreme is the #1 selling car, selling almost 1 million automobiles in the United States of America. 20 years later, 2005, Oldsmobile does not exist. Why? They tried to change their image, but they didn't really change the product. Didn't really go about changing the customer, right? Do you remember the ad campaign, this is not your father's Oldsmobile? You remember that ad campaign, late 80s, early 90s? And of course, people looked at it and said, still looks like my father's Oldsmobile. And then father said, why are they mad at me? I am the father, and it was my Oldsmobile. So they couldn't change their product, apparently. They couldn't change their customers, so they came up with a new image. Instead of a rocket ship taking off, they came up with a circle with an arrow going at it. Oldsmobile no longer exists. Sad story, isn't it? You can change your product, you can change your customers, you can change your image. The reality is any successful reinvention, any successful transformation of your brand, whether you're like me and you sell yourself on a stage at corporate events, or whether you're like you and you sell whatever it is your unique offering is for bank products, it's the same story. Those are your 3 options. It's necessary because, as I told you up front, what two options do you have in life? You've got evolution, you've got extinction. Everybody in this room is familiar with those two brands, am I right? I worked at Sears when I was in college for a few months. I learned a little bit about the good, better, best selling methods, different things that Sears did. I like to read about Sears, kind of a neat story. Maybe you guys have heard it, maybe you haven't, so I'm going to share it with you. Richard Sears in the late 1800s was a train station operator in Redwood Falls, Minnesota. A box of gold watches showed up. The local jeweler refused delivery. He looked at the watches and thought they'd be pretty cool for people like him that worked the rails. So he printed up a little flyer, sent it up and down the rail, and he sold them out at a very nice markup. He thought, man, this is pretty cool, so he ordered another box of watches. A couple years later, he teams up with a guy named Roebuck, who's actually from Lafayette, Indiana. Roebuck's a watchmaker. They moved their operation to Chicago. By the early 1900s, because Mr. Sears was an entrepreneur and a salesperson, he had grown this to a 526-page catalog. He knew from working on the rails that there were people out in the hinterlands that were underserved. We were a rapidly westward developing country. People had money. They would sell their wheat in Kansas, but they had no luxury items. They had no modern living items. He would sell you everything for the home, including the home. Put it on a train, use the rural free delivery United States Postal Service and get you that product. He would take it back if you wanted to return it. He would extend you credit. You guys know Discover Card has its roots in Sears Credit. He would insure you. Do you know that Allstate has its roots in Sears? He would take the product back. He had a catalog. He would ship it to you. Think of this. He was the internet, the Amazon, and the Walmart of his time. They once had the biggest building on planet Earth in Chicago. You guys knew that, right? You're saying, yeah, the Sears Tower. No, actually, that was the second time. On the west side of Chicago in the early 1900s, they had the biggest building on planet Earth. It was their distribution center. Think of that. They were like Amazon. In the 1970s, they built the Sears Tower. One might say that's when they lost their way. That's when they got a little flat-footed. That's when they lost their entrepreneurial edge. That's when they decided that they didn't need to try anymore. Why do we got Walmart up there? Everybody's from a small town in this room for the most part. You guys have Walmart. People love to hate Walmart. Here's what I like about Walmart. They don't wait until they're pushed into a corner to make decisions. You see, Sears right now is called Sears Holdings, right? And they are actually Sears and Kmart. Did you guys know that? Sears and Kmart together, last time I looked at the market capitalization, was about 1/23 the size of Walmart. Sears Holdings actually had its first profitable quarter last quarter, and that's because they started peeling off real estate. If you're peeling off real estate just to try and have a first profitable quarter in like 7 years, you probably have problems, right? We're seeing the extinction of Sears. I do not predict Sears Holdings will make it. You don't either, right? Walmart doesn't wait till they're backed into a corner with a gun to their head to start making changes. That's what you got to applaud about them. Remember 20 years ago when Walmart decided to get into this warehouse thing for small businesses? Who the hell ever would go as a small business to some place called Sam's Club? They got stuff stacked up to the rafters. How's it doing? What about when Walmart got into the gas business? Who ever would go to Walmart to buy their gasoline? A lot of people. What about 10 or 15 years ago, because I'm a food and ag guy, when Walmart said we're going to get into grocery? And oh, the jokes. You're going to go to Walmart to buy your groceries? Who's the #1 grocer in the United States right now? The lesson for you is don't wait till you're backed into a corner to start making decisions and trying something that's transformative, to trying something that's a new attempt at reinventing yourself. Walmart is always progressive. Sears, it's too late. They got complacent. They waited too long. They're backed into the corner, the guns to their head. They're probably going extinct. All right, we're gonna have a little fun now. This is where it always gets fun because people are saying, all right, Damian, you caught me right after lunch. I mean, I'm here, I'm having a good time, but what can I get of this? This is when we give stuff away, Kevin. We go back here to our buddy that says he wants more Damian Mason. You're in luck. Fred, this is a book and a CD. Wow. Where'd you go to college?
Indiana.
Indiana? CD. This is a book called Beer, Sex, and Ice Cream. I gave this away last time. I want my good friend over here at Lake City to realize as much Josh as I'm giving him, I want him to have something fun. I'll autograph this to you, and I know that's going to be very valuable someday. You can say, I've got this autographed book. That's a book called Beer, Sex, and Ice Cream. It's got nothing to do with any of those three things. It's just a fun book. Great bathroom book. Put it there. All right. Now you're saying to me, you're saying, Damian, this is all well and good. I mean, Sears, that's great, but I'm a bank. Tell me about me. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about you. Again, I've made a study of this. You know more about banking than I ever will. But I think I've got a pretty good handle on branding, on creating a product, on the entrepreneurial spirit of what it takes to sort of find a niche, to make a living, to try and stay relevant so that your phone rings, so that your email's full, so that people actually want to do business with you. Everybody in this room represents their brand and their product. You guys represent it at a very high level. Remember, there's a reason that everybody came here to speak. There's a reason that they don't send the tellers here. You are the brand. In your communities, you are the product. You're the executives. You are the chairman. You are the board members. You are the presidents of these companies that you represent. So as a brand and as a product, you've got a couple of real simple directions to go. Are you a commodity? Are you a niche? Well, I think we probably know the answer to that. You're not a commodity, but money is. Money's the biggest commodity that's ever been. Dollar bill, we all know that. Let me tell you about commodity thinking. The world wants you to be a commodity. The world will make you a commodity. I was raised on a dairy farm. From the time I was 8 years old, out bottle feeding those baby calves, I knew about making milk, because that's what we did. You can buy milk every day, Class 3 milk, on the CME, Chicago Board of Trade. It's traded as a pure commodity. Corn, soybeans, milk, all commodities. That's what I knew about growing and raising and producing as a kid. I went to work at Celotex Corporation in 1988 making ceiling tiles. A commodity product, ceiling tiles. My first job out of college for Cooper Lighting, I sold lighting fixtures. As much as they try and tell you there's a big difference between that 2-foot by 4-foot fluorescent troffer and another one, they're basically a commodity. So when I quit my job in 1994 to become a Bill Clinton impersonator, I thought, I am so excited. I am no longer in the commodity business. From now on, I am so unique. I mean, nobody's going to compete with me. I don't have to tell everybody how cheap I am. And so I put out a big price one day, and this agency called me up and said, they don't want to pay that for a comedian. I said, I'm not a comedian. I'm a political satire guy dressed up as Bill Clinton. I mean, this is totally unique, for God's sakes. They did not look at my video. He said, yeah, well, they think you're just a comedian. So they're competing you to somebody else, and you're going to just get farmed out because that other person was going to do it cheaper. So the lesson I learned real quick was the world commoditizes everything. Your battle every day, whether you are a banker or you're Damian Mason, is waking up, your feet hit the floor, and trying to make yourself look different in the eyes of paying customers. To not be viewed as a commodity, because commodities are sold on price and quantity. And I don't think there's any bank in this room that can compete in that direction, right? Right? I got a little troubled. Couple articles out of the Wall Street Journal that I've been looking at, you know, and I thought about you guys. Lending clubs unlikely partners, smaller banks. Anybody happen to see this article? It's been a few months, but I highlighted it because I knew I had this event coming up. Lending clubs are going to do the marketing. Lending clubs are going to find the customers, and small banks like you are going to be there to provide the loan. I think it's a bad idea, because is your strength being a big source of capital, or is your source being the brand that finds the customers? Once this starts happening, they'll find pension funds that can give them the capital. That's commodity thinking. I would not want to go this direction if I were a community independent bank like the people in this room. Conversely, I saw this one. This article ties in with my next slide. You're a niche, right? You're a niche. You play a small role. I mean, you play as a small bank in a community, you have a role. The problem is when you're a niche, you can get pigeonholed, right? Anybody know those two actors right up there? Gilligan? I loved watching the reruns when I was a little kid. Gilligan. Could Bob Denver ever become something that wasn't Gilligan? Hardly no. Maybe Dobie Gillis, right, exactly, because he was pretty well typecast. He was pigeonholed. Pee Wee Herman, pretty well pigeonholed, right? Funny character, don't go to the movies with him. So the point is, when you're a niche, you can quickly become pigeonholed. All of a sudden, maybe those people like that guy was talking about go to Farm Credit because they say, your bank can't get me $170 million for the little vineyard that this person's going to go bankrupt on. This is a neat article right here in the Wall Street Journal that I picked up, made me think about you guys and the niche that you cultivate. Because the thing is, you want to be a niche player, you just don't want to get to where you're pigeonholed, because pigeonhole can be negative. You think I'm kidding? Get your phone out. Several of you already have them out. Google Damian Mason. You will find agency after agency that has my 1997 promotional material as Bill Clinton. And they'll say that they exclusively represent me, because that's what people do in this business. They're screwing you. But you know what? I got so well known as Bill Clinton that a bunch of people decided that's all I could do was Bill Clinton. It was hard as hell to become not Bill Clinton, because I got pigeonholed. So you want to be a niche player because that's where you guys fit, but you also don't want to be pigeonholed. This is a neat article. The key to avoiding loan defaults: lenders who know their borrowers. Seems like kind of good news for you and also something that you guys probably learned your first day on the job, doesn't it? So anyway, commodity versus niche. All right, next idea. Let's talk about you. You're saying, I know I want to reinvent. I want to be there in the future, Damian. I want to be at this conference 10 years from now. You know who else wants you to be here at this conference 10 years from now? I do. You guys have been a client of mine 3 times. You think I'm kidding? Donnelly can stand up here and tell you how much he loves you. I mean it. You're my client. You've been my client 3 times. I worked at this hotel last year. I'm working here this year, and I worked here about 15 years ago. I want you to be here. I'm serious when I want you to be here. I want you to reinvent yourself so that you are relevant in an ever-changing competitive marketplace, right? We talked about the 3 ways we do it. We talked about what reinvention is. Let me tell you what reinvention is not. A new sign is not reinvention. A new jingle is not reinvention. Telling people you care about their money is not reinvention. The point is it has to be actually more substantive than that because other things look transparent. You want to reinvent yourself? You want to reinvent your institution? You want to reinvent your bank? First off, I'm so glad that there was a thing up here when the guy talked about the talent shortage. You guys heard that, right? When he talked about the talent shortage? Let me tell you about talent. It's overrated. There's a book called Talent is Overrated by Jeff Colvin. Has anybody besides me read Talent is Overrated? Okay, it's actually a crappy book, so I'll give you the highlights. In his book, he says that there is no such thing as God-given talent. There is only deliberate practice. Deliberate practice means you do something with discipline and consistency with a desired outcome, specifically designed to achieve that outcome. That's what deliberate practice is. I disagree with what Jeff Colvin says. I think there is a thing called God-given talent. In my business, that woman back there that used to be in comedy, she and I both know there's people that get tired of touring the circuit and they decide they can't break out of being a club act, so they start teaching comedy classes. They're going to teach you how to be funny. Let me tell you something. If you ever get, just like those stars, if you ever decide to buy a star or pay somebody to teach you to be funny, give me your money. I'll teach you to be funny just like I can teach you to be tall. There is a thing called natural talent, but don't rely on it. You're saying, okay, then what's that all about? Does anybody know who that is up there? Mr. Heater, do you know who that is up there? Oh, did I catch you falling asleep again? I tell you, once you go and have the chairman, this chairmanship must be the most exhausting job. Being the chairman of this organization must just be so physically and emotionally and mentally exhausting that it takes you a year to recover. Poor Heater hasn't been able to keep his eyes open for the whole day.
You need to reinvent yourself.
You talking about me, or you just saying you're capturing the big picture theme of what I'm talking about? Okay. Not really a 2-man show here, Dave, all right? I appreciate you listening. That is Penn Jillette right there. Anybody know who Penn Jillette is of Penn & Teller? He's the talking half of Penn & Teller. He's also twice the size of Teller. Let me tell you about Penn. I saw him a year and 3 months ago deliver a speech, and I loved it because, so you probably know, maybe you do not. He has a successful sold-out show in Las Vegas, a magic and comedy act, right? Penn & Teller. He has a theater named after him in Las Vegas. He has an endorsement deal for Mazda cars. He also has a TV show and best-selling book. But you know what? This guy, this man who started out as a street performer working in a park where he would take some of his money and go and give it to a gang member to have protection. That's how he started out. An uneducated blue-collar kid from Massachusetts has all this going for him. You know what he said on stage when I watched him last year? He said, to be a professional commercial pilot, you must log a certain number of hours. Period. You know, really, I thought that was so interesting because if you want to be successful in your business or in my business, it comes down to logging the hours. There are not shortcuts when it comes down to it. He also then talked about a bit that he and Teller put together. He said, we have 5 hours of material for a 2-hour show. Most acts go to Vegas to die. We didn't want that to happen. We still churn out new material. Then he described watching a videotape and breaking down this little comedy magic bit. We do that in this business. We watch video. In fact, I'm videoing right now because I want to get better at what I do. Penn, with all the success he has, talked about breaking down a video to improve his act. With all the success he has, pushing 60 years old, he still is breaking down videotape to get better at what he does. So is he relying on his talent or his work ethic? What can you do to reinvent yourself that actually involves deliberate practice, applying your effort in a disciplined manner for a specific outcome? Reinvention requires salesmanship. We're going back to that. Remember we talked about Play-Doh? Talked about the marketing job that Marlboro did? You got to be a salesman. Apple launched new products this week. Wasn't it just amazing? Wasn't it big? No, it wasn't, was it? Kind of lackluster, wasn't it? Because without Steve Jobs standing on that stage with his black sweater and his blue jeans holding that new product, he had the salesmanship. He made you want that product. Does Apple have that salesmanship today? No matter how good your product is, without salesmanship, it will not catch on. The world resists new ideas. If you're going to reinvent yourself and your community as something you currently are not seen as, it will require a tremendous amount of salesmanship. We just talked about how old your charters are. How long have you been seen as what you currently are? You're going to have to resell yourself, your offering, and what you are to become reinvented. Why is Calvin Coolidge on there? Kevin was about to ask that. I'll tell you why Calvin Coolidge is on there. 1996, my political comedy show started to take off. Things were going great guns. I got a lot of crazy phone calls. Got a phone call one day. This guy said, Damian, I've seen your act. You're amazing. This political comedy show is really starting to take off. I want to know what I can do to be successful with my political impersonation. I said, well, what do you do? He says, I'm a Calvin Coolidge impersonator. I said, well, he hasn't been in office for 70 years. You might be fighting an uphill battle there. The point is, the greatest salesperson on earth cannot sell an unsaleable product. Be a salesperson, but be saleable. I'll tell you one other funny story. I don't think I told you last year. We got a lot of funny phone calls during the Clinton era. Not so much anymore, but in 1998, during the Monica Lewinsky scandal, you guys remember that, right? Monica Lewinsky's in office. I'm sorry, Bill Clinton's in office. Well, presumably she was there too. She just had a different role. I got a phone call from my agent stepping off the airplane. He says, Damian, Hustler Magazine just called us up. They want you to do a nude pictorial with a woman that looks like Monica Lewinsky. I said, I am not going to do a nude pictorial in Hustler Magazine with my Bill Clinton makeup on. My God, what would my mother say? He goes, well, I assumed that was going to be your response, but I did quote him $30,000. I said, well, Mom doesn't read Hustler. I did not get the gig. Something about limitations. You want to, right, exactly. Too many Marlboros. You want to reinvent yourself, you got to think like an entrepreneur. This is probably going to be the biggest challenge for the people that do what you do. I read an entrepreneur book. I've read a lot of them. Every day I'm on an airplane, I try to read to make myself better, stronger at what I do as a small business person. An entrepreneurial book I once read said, if you want to be an entrepreneur and take your idea to lift off, don't listen to accountants, bankers, or lawyers. Because all three of those categories are designed to play defense. This is going to be your struggle. You guys are normally defensive-minded individuals. Entrepreneurial thinking is not defensive-minded because you can't just always think about what I might lose. That's going to be the struggle. There's the checklist. Don't rely on talent. Don't tell me how smart your people are. Don't tell me how well educated your people are that you have on staff. Talent and work ethic. You also have to be a great salesperson, but you need a saleable product. And most importantly, think like an entrepreneur. What does tomorrow bring? You know, I get asked all the time. They say, Damian, do you have a lot of competition? I don't know. Probably. That sounds cocky, but I'm not being cocky. I'm just telling you probably. One thing I made a conscious decision to do in 1994 when I quit my job was to only look at how I can occupy a space doing something. I make my people that are in my business mad. They think that they're doing some, I don't know what they think. But you know what I tell people? I sell dates on a calendar where I can get on a stage and deliver value to a paying client. That's innovative thinking versus worrying about my competition. If you worry about the bank down the street, that is following. If you worry about tomorrow and the customer of tomorrow and how you can innovate and reinvent yourself to fill a need for a customer that will pay you money for that need, that's innovative entrepreneurial thinking. I don't know about my competition. I don't worry about it because I want to worry about filling a need for Chris Bennett, and next week it's going to be the Feed Association of Kansas, and the week after that it's going to be the insurance group. It's going to be somebody, somebody, somebody. Always think about innovative thinking through how I can fulfill a need for a customer tomorrow. All right, the lesson from Coca-Cola quite simply is this. Do not fear making a change. Oh, I don't know if I make a change. My bank's been around for 119 years. If I do this thing, I might fail. Trying something new does not kill you. That's the example from Coca-Cola. They tried something new. They messed with a brand that's 60 times more big than any other brand on planet Earth. You can go in a third world country in Africa and buy Coca-Cola. It's an amazing product, by the way. I hate Pepsi. Tastes like flat pancake syrup. Pepsi's so bad it even sucks when you mix it with bourbon, doesn't it? Let me tell you something about Coca-Cola. I'm a big fan. I drink 3 Cokes a day, 2 Cokes a day, because I didn't get soda pop growing up. I told you all that last year. When I was a kid growing up, we were fairly, lower middle class, let's say, farm type people. You know what we got? We got soda when there was a special occasion in the family. And by special occasion, I mean a member of the family had influenza. 7-Up. Because that cures the flu. It doesn't. Disgusting. I see 7-Up on the table. I get wincy thinking my brother's going to puke on me. What choice did Coca-Cola have? They're the iconic brand. They are Coke, but they're looking kind of stodgy. It's 1980s. We were in high school when this happened. Coke's starting to lose market share. Imagine that, to upstart Pepsi. Pepsi has a thing called the Pepsi Challenge. Remember that? You walked out of the grocery store and a person was standing there and they would harness you over and give you a sample. You would taste Pepsi, compare it with Coke. More people were choosing Pepsi than Coke. I don't know why. What's Coke supposed to do? Worse yet, Pepsi makes Coke look so old-fashioned, flat-footed, and outdated because they came up with a slogan called the choice of a new generation. And what else did they do? They coupled that slogan with the biggest pop singer on planet Earth, Michael Jackson. Speaking of transformation. Michael Jackson, give you a second to think about that one. Michael Jackson would moonwalk across a TV screen and throw down a Pepsi. You think that isn't getting Coca-Cola scared? So what they had to do something. It lasted 3 months, in case you don't remember. New Coke lasted 3 months. What choice did they have? They had to try something. The lesson for you, don't think that trying something new is going to kill you. It didn't kill Coke. Besides, Coke's actually pretty inventive. They're pretty much about transformation. Look at those brands. Remember those? Remember I just told you that $13 billion worth of plastic bottles of water are sold in the United States of America every year? That's an amazing number, isn't it? That's a free product, but Coke's right there. Coke Life, I saw that being tested in Iowa when I traveled there this winter. Coke Life is a product that's between a Coke and a Diet Coke. It still tastes crappy, but it doesn't have all the calories and it doesn't have none of the calories. Fair Life, that's their attempt at milk. I'm a dairy farm kid. You want to talk about a product that needs reinvented? Milk. They're from 46 gallons in 1945 down to 19 gallons today. They need something. Don't think for a second that they haven't tried reinvented. The lesson for you, don't think you're too big to try something new. Look at Coca-Cola and don't worry that a new idea is going to kill you. It didn't kill Coke. I told you already I want you to be here because you're a client of mine. I told you know more about banking than I know. I had a discussion with Mr. Zahn, and we talked a lot about things that you guys know that I don't, and a couple things that I know that I could maybe share with you. I'm mostly here to be your funny MC, but I also wanted to deliver some value. That's what I was hired to do. This session was about reinvention. What it is, what it isn't, real-world case studies, things that you can learn from, lessons from the big boys, lessons from the companies over here, lessons from the ones that did well. That's what your future looks like. You're going to have a person later on at this conference talk all about millennials, talk all about generational changes. They know more about this stuff than I know, but this is what you're up against. I'd say don't worry about the competition. You worry about your customers and how you innovate to fulfill their need to be relevant in their marketplace. That's what reinvention is all about. I did also pick this up off of CNBC. This was just from September 8th. The successful bank of the future will have fewer branches but better branding, with technological advancements getting priority over the traditional neighborhood touch, according to analysis that sees an industry inflection point at hand. What did they just say there? Branding. How your customers see you. They see you as a solution. They see you as reinvented. My name is Damian Mason. I'm going to be with you until tomorrow evening, until tomorrow afternoon. I want to talk to you about reinvention. Now you got ready for Mr. Kevin. Thank you.